Welcome to our Delme podcast, Global Operations on the Go. I'm your host, Therese Snow. Today's topic is on how field service planning can help companies offer top-notch customer service with happy employees. In this podcast, we deep dive into four major changes that are currently happening in the market, which in fact will impact the business now and in the near future. Let's take a deeper dive into the actions that businesses should be taking to get prepared. At the table, we have our two experts, Bart Williamson from Ordina and Tuan Jansen from Dassault Systems. Gentlemen, can you briefly introduce yourself and your area of expertise?
Yeah, sure, Therese. Hi, this is Tuan speaking. I'm a consultant with Dassault Systems since many years, started here 2004. And my particular area of interest and focus is planning and scheduling in workforce and other industries.
Hello, Therese. My name is Bart Willemsen. I am a supply chain business specialist in the supply chain optimization division at Ordina. Personally, I'm working in the area of supply chain for almost 25 years. And my personal background is in industrial engineering, and I'm very passionate about helping customers in improving their business results with better supply chain planning and optimization.
All right, excellent. Thank you both for joining us. So before we continue the conversation, I think it makes sense to get a common understanding on the definition of field service planning. Tuan, how would you define field service planning?
So I suppose you look first at field service. So what is field service? There's many industries and organizations that have a mobile workforce where some of their staff are visiting clients or sites or locations where certain activities need to be done. When you then talk about the planning, that brings some additional complexities. Often it's not just about getting the right people that need to have certain skills. If you could be do certain technical inspections that need to take place, then you need to have the right skills and certificates for those things. But often also people need a vehicle to go there, so the vehicles need to be planned in combination with the people. And then as well, the equipment or tools that people need to bring, where some are, let's say, less in short supply, but often the kind of customers that we have, they have high-end machinery or equipment of which they only have a few, so scarce resources that also need to be planned. And this combination is for planning in particular a unique complexity that you have to get optimal use and not have these scarce resources planned under efficiently. In an environment where things often change. You can imagine that if equipment breaks down, needs to be repaired, then you have often short-term changes to the plan because you have SLAs to meet of your customers. In other words, if they report a breakdown in equipment, you have to visit them within a certain amount of hours. And these constant changes in a context of having to plan multiple types of things together, or multi-resource planning, as we sometimes call it, those are, you could say, the specific aspects of field service planning. And then, you have aspects in the short term, which is more the disruptions and the changes, but also in the long term, how many people do you need in a certain month? Sometimes weather has an effect where in the winter you need more people than in the summer. So also looking at these seasonal changes are aspects that you often see with field service planning.
Sure. Thank you for that. And Bart, can you tell me how field service planning is related to Ordina?
Ordina has a 20 plus years partnership with Delmia Quintic, and as a team we have implemented the solution over 100 times. It includes many workforce planning cases, like for example at the Dutch Customs, Belgian Customs, Dutch Police, many home care organizations, and also security companies. Based on our broad experiences, Ordina has created the so-called FSP OMR solution, which stands for Field Service Planner Multi-Resource, and especially for the planning and scheduling of the mobile workforce in the field.
Sure. And I already mentioned that you see four major changes which will dramatically impact the business and the employee planning and scheduling. Could you please mention the four major changes you're talking about? As you're an expert in the markets and what trends are super relevant to this day, or this day and age actually, that you may notice people are struggling with or will be facing in the short term?
Four major changes that we see in the market are: first, demographic changes. Secondly, sustainability and also the focus on social responsibility in that area. Thirdly, the growing need for resiliency. And fourth, the customers that are getting more and more demanding over time. And yeah, there's an increasing need to exceed the customers' expectations.
In this podcast, let's focus on the first two changes you mentioned. Bart, could you please elaborate on the first mentioned major change, which is the demographic change?
Okay, first on the demographics change. Due to the aging of the population, the working populations, there will be a shift towards a new generation of people. The current working generation, we call the so-called Generation X, consists of mostly people born between the 60s and the mid-80s. Yeah, in the future, the next generation will take over. We call them the so-called Generation Y or the millennials. And they were mostly born between the 80s and the mid-90s. And generally speaking, there are some big differences between those generations. And that also includes the work attitude. The next generation of millennials is more and more focused on their own work-life balance. Also, yeah, the population of Generation Y will be smaller than the current Generation X. So this will also lead to shortages on the labor market. Yeah, both points make that the employee planning will also become more complex and challenging. The combination of those two will also influence the planning perspective. The second point is sustainability and also the social responsibility. Sustainability is a very hot topic on the company boards nowadays. And the SO system is also helping many companies in that area. Most people think with sustainability on the climate change. Yeah, but the topic is much broader than that. And also social responsibility falls under that header. A way for companies to measure their sustainability, for example, is the ESG score, which stands for environmental impact, social impact, and governance. The social responsibility includes, for example, if all collective labor laws and other laws will be respected or are respected, but also if individual rosters are equally and honestly divided over the employees. And yeah, also if employees are also able to participate in the planning process to influence their own work-life balance.
And we talked about the first two major changes, which focus on the social impact and the need to come to a better work-life balance. To elaborate on this, could you mention some key challenges planners are currently facing while they often use, for example, Excel or other traditional planning tools?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing as a consequence of what Bart just mentioned is that planners need to deal with more information than in the past, and information that is changing more often. So where traditionally, let's say, people had the plan in their minds and could almost create a plan without even using any IT system, or in some other cases having like that what you see often, plans in Excel, where people capture the plans and also distribute plans based on Excel. That actually no longer works if more information needs to be managed, more people get involved in the process, both planners, but in fact also the employees that you plan, because again, they demand more flexibility, more input. They want to put in preferences for when they want to work or when they want to have an afternoon off for private reasons. So what you see is that those traditional tools essentially bring limitations. And that has to do with the demand itself. So your customers are typically less eager to say, well, make a new plan for me and I will wait a few days before I get a result. They expect immediate feedback from those plans. Yeah, specific skills and competencies, to be honest, I think that's what you have all the time. You need to bring the right people for the right jobs. But again, if your orders and demand is changing more often, it becomes a lot more complicated to keep tracking that you have the right people on the job. So that's again an element of more complexity in the information. I think what you then also see is, and that's maybe a more recent trend, Companies are suffering a bit from lack of people. There's a lot of places where you have employment options open. So in a context where the work continues to be getting more complicated and people are not available to do all the work, you squeeze a bit the plan, so that makes it a bit more complex, which is also an aspect where you would look for some more sophisticated planning solutions. And I think also in particular in the context of quality for your customers, but also sometimes social aspects, following the rules is getting also more and more important. Rules in terms of labor rules, making sure you don't have people that work hours beyond the legal limits or agreed limits, but also rules that you agree with your customers. And if you want to satisfy customers and make them happy, then you also want to meet the expectations in terms of response times to orders or requests or issues they raise. So those are some examples of why the aspects that Bart just mentioned increase what is already a complex process, planning, and add more complexity for the planners.
Right. Thanks, Tuan. No, that certainly does make sense. And now onto you, Bart. Can you indicate what will be the missed opportunity if companies are unprepared in dealing with the mentioned changes?
Okay, about the missed opportunities, I can say that if you cannot provide a good work-life balance for employees, you will run the risk that people will leave the company and that your retention rates will drop dramatically. It's very expensive to replace experienced people. According to Forbes, the turnover cost can range from 50% of an annual salary for the entry-level employees up to 200% of the annual salary cost for an experienced employee. A second missed opportunity is when planners are not in control of the planner, it can become very costly. To deliver the services, companies need to have buffers for backup resources. And that means that also you need to have extra employees available, or people need to work overtime, which is also very costly.
Oh, absolutely. So how will the proposed solution help the planner to maximize the employee well-being and satisfaction?
Ordina has created the FSP MR solution based on the best-of-breed workforce planning solution from Delmia Quintic. Based on the many past experiences, we as Ordina have created a standard off-the-shelf solution, which is offered as a managed service to medium and big-sized companies in the targeted industries. And these targeted industries are field inspection companies, facility management companies, construction services, and also utilities and energy companies. The pricing of the solution that will scale with the number of employees that are planned, and the template solution can be implemented very fast compared to the current traditional planning tools available. On top of the very rich planning and scheduling capabilities, the solution also supports employee vitality, which is a unique library that combines 9 different employee-focused KPIs into one global vitality KPI, which serves the optimal employee well-being. Also, the solution supports self-rostering, which is something that people are more and more requesting when they go to the market, and that includes the employee satisfaction.
All right, thanks for that, Bart. And now, as a final question, Tuan, this is for you. What is the main takeaway for our listeners in your own words?
Yeah, I think so. As I mentioned in the beginning, and that's also, in fact, what we see when we speak to customers, that planning is getting more complex than it used to be. And I think what specifically for some of the industries that also Bart mentioned, for the field services, it is not just the workforce planning, but you have to plan the other aspects, the vehicles, the tools, etc. as well. There's just a level of complexity that in order to get it right, you really need a good solution. And I think what Ordina has been able to accomplish with their field resource planning solution is to capture the important elements of what field service planning is all about, and is able to help customers with a solution that allows them to essentially get their plans under control, but at the same time get a good view on the trade-off between various goals that they want to achieve. So looking at the employee satisfaction, the social aspects, the work-life balance, etc. But also at the same time making sure you look after your own internal resources and remain cost effective in delivering service to your customers. I think that is going to be very helpful to many organizations.
Oh, certainly, of course. So thank you, Tuan and Bart, for taking the time to speak with me today. Thanks for our listeners for tuning in. Be sure to stay tuned for part 2 on Stay Ahead of the Competition with Field Service Planning now and in the ever-challenging future. I'm your host, Therese Snow, and you've been listening to Global Operations on the Go.